Let's talk top 5 running backs for 2023. Next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm here with Dan Schneier, and we are talking about the top 5 running backs for the 2023 season. And Dan, the way I see it, and I think most people tend to view it this way, there's a clear top 2 guys who are going to be vying for the number 1 pick in many fantasy football drafts, and that's Christian McCaffrey and Austin Ekeler. Now, they might not go number 1 in most leagues. I think most people are going to have Justin Jefferson, but Christian McCaffrey and Austin Ekeler probably going to be the top 2 running backs on most boards. So the way I want to ask it is this. Mm-hmm. Is that your top 2?
That is my top 2, yep.
And what order do you have them in?
I have it McCaffrey, then Ekeler.
I have the same. I could see a case for McCaffrey behind Ekeler just because, the numbers when Elijah Mitchell was healthy last season, it was like 11 carries per game for McCaffrey rather than 14 or 15. And, it was Mitchell getting a lot of fourth quarter work. But there was a lot of talk about this between Heath Cummings and Adam Azer on Twitter a couple weeks ago where they were going back and forth. And one thing that Heath pointed out was a lot of those games were blowouts. So it's hard to know exactly how much of that was, the presence of Elijah Mitchell versus the game script. What would be, if you were going to make the case for Austin Ekeler as the number 1 pick, what would it be?
The case for Ekeler is that it repeats what he did of last year. I mean, look, last year, Austin Ekeler, this is really what made him in my mind. You could talk about the 38 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. That's extremely important. He's had more touches in the red zone, but any running back than Joe Mixon over these last seasons. But to me, it's the targets. It's the volume. We know that target or receptions are worth 2.7 more points on a historic basis than carries in fantasy football. And he had 127 last year. The third most was Ramondre Stevenson with 88. I mean, we're not even talking anyone even close, right? So that's changed a lot. And the other case for me would just be Kellen Moore coming over. Some people think it'll hurt him. Kellen Moore has been second, and first in his last 4 seasons as offensive coordinator in tempo. So we know that they're going to get a lot more plays, and a lot more plays means a lot more chances to score, and that's good for fantasy as well. So that would be my case for.
All right. Now, I think there are probably, I'm going to say 4 candidates for the next 3 spots. And, obviously one of them is going to be rookie Bijan Robinson. You mentioned the targets stat and how much more valuable targets are. He's got a chance to be the number 1 running back as a rookie if he's, the workhorse and he's heavily involved in the passing game. Where do you have Bijan?
I have Bijan ranked 3rd, and I just jumped on FFT before this, and I said I actually think that Bijan, me and Tara both agreed Bijan was our running back with the most upside of anyone in the top 5. So for me with Bijan, there's just a perfect set of circumstances going on there. First of all, he's the best prospect I've ever evaluated on film, including Saquon Barkley. What he has that Barkley doesn't have is mental processing. He sets up his blocks really well. He's really good in between the tackles. And what he also has that Barkley doesn't have that I think is really good for fantasy is he's not your Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, where yes, they can catch flare routes. Yes, they can catch screens. They can do the basic things in the passing game. This dude can get lined up and run arrow routes. He can run vertical routes on the wheel routes, and he's going to do something like similar to McCaffrey if they use him right as a receiver. Also, 39% force miss tackle rate, the most force miss tackles in the history of Pro Football Focus's charting last year with 102. Over 1,000 of his yards came after contact last year. He just is the perfect prospect in the perfect spot because the Falcons had the number 1 ranked rush offense last year per PFF. They were 2nd in run rate over expected. It's everything you could. They have the best guard, in my opinion, of run blocking in football, and Chris Lindstrom. So I just love the situation and I love the talent. So he's my 3.
There are some real questions about the other 3. I mentioned there were 4 candidates for the next 3. And, Jonathan Taylor's looking for a new contract. He is under contract for next season, so I don't think there's much risk of him sitting out. But there are questions about the Indianapolis Colts offense. I have him as the 3rd running back. And then we've got 2 guys in Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs, who are at least my candidates for the next 2 spots, who aren't technically under contract right now. They haven't signed their franchise tags, and there are whispers about both of them potentially sitting out. And, in Josh Jacobs' case, we've gotten some talk the past couple of days about, how he might really be willing to sit out training camp if he doesn't get a long-term extension. So how much concern do you have, and where do you have Saquon and Josh Jacobs?
I have Saquon RB4, Josh Jacobs RB5. Jonathan Taylor's not in my top 5 personally. I have zero concern whatsoever with them holding out. There's just simply no leverage for running backs to miss a season of their career and come back and get more money. Take the $10 million. it's going to be more than you make by sitting out and then getting another contract. So I think they understand that, and I have no concern.
Yeah, it's less about the leverage and more in Josh Jacobs' case, I think more about just like the Raiders have no long-term investment in him. Are they just going to give him 400 touches and ride him into the ground, and they don't have any concern about his long-term? That's the concern there. But
isn't that a good thing, though,
from a fantasy perspective, we'd be thrilled about that. So I have no problem with that. I think, if anything, he's got a better case to be number 3 than I think most people give him credit for. One, he was RB3 last season. Josh McDaniels' offense, I don't think he's a particularly good NFL head coach. But his offenses over the course of his career, New England, now Las Vegas, he's basically been top 12 in PPR points for running backs every year except the 2 years in Denver, the 1 year he was the St. Louis Rams offensive coordinator. We're talking 12 years ago now. But other than that, he's consistently created a ton of PPR points for his running backs. I think Josh Jacobs is in a great situation. As long as he signs that franchise tag, I think he's going to be a no doubt top 5 running back. And that's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll be back tomorrow to talk top 5 wide receivers. We'll see you then.